I mean, at some point, I remember saying this when we went to Capitol for the first, and it might have been $500 million at the time, right? Which is astronomical.
Back then,
yeah. And this was, we were just talking about, that was stage one of what ramped up from there over in the COVID era that we were trying to just get our hands on OFCI, right? And breakers. And if you look at that and you think to yourself, I remember saying, how many generators do you think they make in this world? Like, we need this many. That means digital and Compass, Microsoft, the government, hospitals.
Oh,
everybody
China,
needs
like. I just had a guy in here who's like, China just bought up all the Wardzillas or something like that. I was like, I don't know what that means, but but it's like, oh, that means they just bought up 2 years of production line.
Right.
Like, damn, that's crazy. That company needs to go get an OEM and start building some more of their engines. You know
if you even broke that down into a smaller facet, like the copper, like how much copper we have in this world, it's like a 4-day supply of copper.
For real?
Yeah, I don't know what the number is now, but we got to a point where if you stop mining copper right now, like there was an industry problem that you'd see real impact in 4 to 5 days.
Oh, wow.
So like there's shit like that that's going on, right? How hard it was to get a breaker.
Oh, I remember those days.
Yeah. So, it's everything in there. And that's why we'd like to build a better mousetrap. So get the smartest guys in the room. And I think you touched on something that was extremely important. And as an electrical guy, I give the mechanical guys shit all the time. It's like, you guys just push an air around. Like seriously, it's whatever. And now they're the kings, right? Because we got to figure it out.
They're the rock stars. Just don't tell them that.
They are. I know. We got Rob King over there, he's like a mechanical savant. Like with his stuff, it's great. And just going through this is the world we're living in now, right? Is that how do you cool these things? And because at some point, even the building, like if you look at our IntelliScale design, it's roughly a 50,000 square foot data hall with 50 megawatts plus of power in her, right? So yeah, it's wild. And one of the designs we just pushed out was for 300 kW a rack. So
damn, I didn't know we were talking about that yet.
Yeah. So a row of cabinets was 3 megawatts, one row. And so we're solving
How many cabinets is that?
There's 10 cabinets. And so we're knocking it out, like trying to make this thing work, and it's mechanical. At some point, the 50,000 square foot it was plenty of room.
I was like, that seems like a waste of space.
Well, it was, of course, Hayden's like, dude, seriously, can you make this thing smaller? I said, yeah. Can I float chillers in midair? Like, because you do need the chillers at some point. Now they're becoming the thing that takes up the footprint that defines the building. Yeah. Right. And until we come up with a 700 ton or 750 or 1,000 ton chiller, like, damn, where are we going to be? Or the industry starts embracing warmth in a data center, right?
I think there's going to be both. I think that there'll be concessions there. Yeah. You mean like the ASHRAE standards and stuff?
Yeah, for sure.
I think so too. I think that you'll see people are like, what's the limit? Then why aren't we operating at that limit?
Well, you'll see the Dells and the manufacturers say, oh, we can run this thing at north of 100, 110 degrees all day, every day. And then we're like, well, then why are we cooling this data center down to 70 degrees?
Some SLA requires it.
That's right.
Some contract. But I'll tell you, like Bilotti was on here and he was talking, he's like, look, man, when we were in lab environments, I would put them outside in the rain. He's like, we'd ship them back. And the only thing that'd be in them when we'd leave them outside running would be like mud from the fans sucking.
Yeah, they suck in the dirt.
Yeah, but he's like, but we've run these things where they told us that they would set fire to themselves and they would still be functioning just fine. So like their test limits, those envelopes, and there's people that are like, look, just run it like this, because if you run it beyond that, then we can't guarantee a warranty. But the reality is the limits that they're putting on it are so they could absolutely get more. And I think that report, that Goldman Sachs report, really did talk about, because we talked with Christian about, he talks about how he did the long division to figure out the PUE formula. Think about the impact that had on utilization of power efficiency within our industry.
Right.
He probably cut utilization or waste down in half, right? So maybe we would have had a much greater waste but now it's figuring out how to have a more efficient and a denser form of power and energy at our data center. So we're getting more out of what's there versus parasitic or wasteful energy, right? And I think that that's what you're talking about too, is a higher density of power being delivered with less waste.
That's right. Yeah, and the waste came in multiple factors when we were looking at IntelliScale, which was, listen, if I can reduce the amount of concrete, the amount of drywall, the steel, I still have to have the components in there, but if I can start reducing land and all of the ancillary things that build a data center, right?
Yeah.
I create more space for parks, trees, all those other things, and I can cram it all in here. And now my biggest problem is cooling it and getting people to put all this stuff in a rack that people weren't willing to do in the past, right? We would get to, if you look at the across the U.S. right now, I think the average KW per rack is still at like 4.
Shut up. Is that for real?
Yeah. So it's not.
I did not think that.
And you just see like in this, where we are now, it is starting to ramp up a little bit, but it has to ramp up quite a bit for that number to actually grow much. So we, you want to get to a world. That's why it's funny when people talk about 16 kW rack. Yeah, that seems about right. And everybody's talking about that now, right? But I could count fairly easily how many people in our whole portfolio are drawing that kind of power. Now, that's not to say that ramp isn't going to go like this, but when you think of the reality of it is what it is right now, there's very few people drawing north of 10 kW rack.
But I think I agree with you, but I think that what we're talking about with the future programs that you're building, I mean, I'm talking to clients that are designing between 450 to 500 watts per square foot.
For sure.
And that's, 50, 60 plus kW per rack. And even that is a big problem to solve for, right? So when people are like 100 and 200, I'm like, that's a completely different monster, right? And I don't know how big of a standard that'll become yet, or if that's something that they're using to try to figure out if it's scalable, because that's what it is. I mean, people are rolling out all kinds of different permutations and figuring out what is the most economically efficient way to roll out my space, power, and cooling right now. Maybe it's better in putting it 2 rows of 10 facing each other with some sort of, I don't know, rear door heat exchanger, cold plate. I don't know what, but there's actually not a million options. There's only so many different designs. There's only so many different ways you can deliver space and power and cooling, right? So it's just trying to figure out which iteration is the best one for that density, right? And then figuring out if that's what people want to standardize on. While you standardize on that, and then next thing you know, you have AMD and Intel and everybody else, NVIDIA coming out with a completely different whatever.
Right.
So now we have to redesign around that iteration as well. And like Dean said it once, he's like, people are too busy designing garages around Ferraris when not a lot of people have Ferraris. Most people are driving F-150s, and we need to build garages around more F-150s. Those are the workhorses of the industry. Does that make sense?
100%.
And I still think like the Open Compute project or forum, like they have a lot of time invested into what we're going to be doing in 2 to 3, 4 years from now, right? But I'm so focused on what we're doing just today, right? That like that 3 or 4 years from now shit is great, but it's not repeatable yet, right? What's repeatable now is a very standard topology and a large volume of it. And really the problem isn't even on the data center side anymore. I think the problem is figuring out the mechanical side or figuring out the power side.
Right.
That's it. And power is probably the number one constraint for everything.
It is.
Right.
It is for sure. And cooling is right there as well. But cooling we can solve. I mean, you just give it more space and push more air or liquid to the chip or liquid to the rack in some way, shape, or form. But it doesn't work without power. So
I think that figuring out how we supply our own power plants to these. I think the data center one day will be synonymous as today we know the data center is the 4 walls and the roof that all the MEP sits in along with the white space. When we move forward, there will be a time where we talk about data centers and people will already know that implies the power generation that comes with it. It'll just be one thing. People won't buy just data centers. They'll buy the power generation that comes with it.
That's right.
It'll just be one product.
And does it wrap itself just right around distribution or taking distribution out and put yourself around generation? Because we're getting away from that, right? We're getting away from the football cities. That's how we kind of used to look at things. Well, now we're just getting closer to, all right, this land is available. There is, there's
some natural gas close to it.
There's natural gas close to it. There's distribution that is running right around that area, so we can tap off of distribution. Because a lot of times it is generation is fine, but distribution isn't there. And so that's why even if you start solving it at the generation side, the problem still exists down the road where I have to get distribution there.
Yeah.
So, and that's the problem we're running into in a lot of places.
Well, it's distribution on electrical, but it's capacity on natural gas because those pipes are, there's a lot of challenges getting those pipes. I mean, that's why Texas is such a great market for data centers right now is because there's a lot of natural gas and And there's pockets all over the place where you could tap into. What I've learned is some of these places are distressed markets or distressed assets. So we're once doing something that had a large requirement for power there, maybe
Something like a steel mill
or smelting plant or, any of those things. But there was something that was there. It was industrial and it needed a lot of power. That business failed. A lot of the shit's still there.
It is.
And we just have to go out to that and then we have to figure out how to solve for the connectivity to it later on. We'll have to go figure out how to get.
And connectivity is slipping a little bit down on the food chain,
yeah,
which is good. I mean, they're solving for that because AI, you'll figure that stuff out. I did drive through one of the smelting regions in like the Dyer, Indiana type area, just looking at those places. Because you're right. I mean, the substations are like this, like they're all over the place. They're old as hell, and you do have to retrofit that side of it. But that's going to be, I'm actually kind of surprised that wave hasn't already really hit.
I think that's the first Band-Aid. That'll be the first Band-Aid where someone's going to figure out someone is going to have a ton of money. They're going to come from power and they're going to want to be in this game and they're going to go figure out how to consolidate and consume some of those little pieces, like almost like land banking.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to go figure out how to squat on some of those things. And they're going to go turn around and be like, I have a premium. I have this land and I have this access to power and you could get it all turned on day one. And you know what? Not for nothing. It's going to be valuable for a little bit. That stuff lasts about as long as banana does, but it's going to be out there. There's going to be a few people that are going to strike it here and strike it there, but that's not like, we're going to end up going to places that nothing is there yet. And we're going to go build a shit ton of volume there because it won't bother anybody. Now the noise will. There's not a lot of competition for labor maybe there. It's got access to railways, which means we have access to fiber taps. It's got access to natural gas. So it means we can go fick and tap into something there. It's going to give us what we need, but it'll give us enough space to be able to really build at scale.
So do you think it's more like the Wild West was? Like at some point, or the gold rush, you start building towns where people were going and it's almost like that because you hit it spot on. Is that like I can put a data center in the middle of nowhere.
Yep.
You still got to get people to work there and, and the customer wants their people to be somewhere around there. Well, are we going to start looking at campuses that are going to be multi-use, like villages that are built around these sorts of things, right?
It's funny you say that because like, I had Snowhorn on. We all love Josh, right? His passion is also infectious and he has a motor, right? So he's going to radiate and vibrate all this shit that's really important to him and everybody's going to hear it. And like, I love
whether they want to or not.
Yeah. But
that's good.
Yes. I mean, that's what makes him effective is that he's relentless and he'll grind. And the thing is what he did was he was the first one, I think, to the wall of that concept of building towns around master planning communities for enterprises that are hyperscale, right? So yes, I think that you're going to see people do it in other states like Nevada. I think that there's a group, I had Rhea Williams on. Her group is looking to kind of do the same as Quantum, not to trivialize what they're doing or paint with too broad of a stroke. Everybody has a little bit of unique sauce to the way they approach it. But essentially going into an area where there's a large volume of land with access to either the fiber, miles from fiber, now miles from distribution or capacity of natural gas. And they can go and they could master plan that entire area to support a gig, at some point. And it doesn't matter if Cyrus goes in there and buys so much space, with access to whatever. And then one of the large hyperscalers are right next to you. And then a Vantage would be right next to them or another one. And I do see that becoming an urban community that you'll see, like I do believe right now, I got 3 kids. I got 2 in college and 1 who's getting ready to be a senior in high school. And I believe that they will either one day work in this industry directly or they will work in orbit of this industry in terms of the ecosystem supporting this industry. Because much like how the second utility that ever adjusted and pivoted, I think that the 5th utility is the data center, right? So if you take the first is plumbing, the second is electricity, third is gas, and 4th is connectivity. You add them together on an industrial level, and it's just the 5th utility. It's one data center, and that's the engine for all AI in the sky for the cloud, right? And if you take that industry and that knowledge, that awakening, that society will begin to understand, right? They're going to be getting limitations to what they could do with their technology, and then they're going to wonder why. They're gonna be like, how come I can't have more of this? And they're gonna be like, look, you think you want unlimited use to AI, but sorry, but AI consumes a ton of power and we just don't have the ability to give you everything you want yet. And then the consumer will demand it, businesses will solve for it, and then that all equates into, contracts for operators like you to go build and solve for it for themselves if they're not building it for themselves. In most cases, you're building in parallel to your clients. They're building for themselves while you're building for them, and it's a race between who put the capacity on first, right?
Right.
So I think that there'll be this huge shift, and I think that fifth utility will become something that, the kids that are in college now before they graduate are going to be like, why would I go there's 9 different job domains for 265 different jobs in this industry. Why wouldn't they go park whatever they wanted to do here, right? Where it's an emerging industry,
sure,
growing by double-digit CAGRs, and we're also, a lot of the people in this industry have been here for more than 20 years. You and I have been here for more than 20 years, right? I got in the industry in 2000 when I got out of the Navy. So not that we're set to retire just because we have gray hair. We started this game without gray hair.
That's right.
My thing is we still got a lot of time left on this. I got 10 more years in this game at a minimum, right? Because it's not done cooking. This industry will flip and become mainstream. Try to imagine a world without connectivity in your home. That was the 4th utility. Can you imagine not having that? Right? I mean, the 5th utility will be just as aware to us, the consumers, that it'll be just as vital. And now you'll see kids that are looking at this as an emerging industry, although it's 25 years old. It'll just be emerging. It'll be an overnight successful industry soon. And then you're going to see everyone racing to put their passion and their talents into this industry. And that's going to solve a lot of our people problems, which will solve, I think a lot of these kids will come in with ideas that are going to challenge what we've been doing in this industry for 20 years. And they're going to ask, like, why aren't we doing this? And we're like, good question. Why aren't we? Right. And you're going to have those disruptive change agents.
Oh, for sure. I mean, if you look at, just going back to what you were saying, when we got into this industry, how different it was. Like, when alphanumeric pagers came out,
2 megawatts were big deals, dude. Did you hear about the 2 megs that company did last year? They had 2 whole
it was
megs.
crazy. So when they built 350 Cermak, at the time when they were putting the electrical in at 350 Cermak, it was the most power per square foot in the world. That was the big,
I believe it.
And you're talking 125, 150, maybe watts a square foot. Like now you're, like we were saying, you're talking 1,000 watts a square foot, right? So although that's a good stretch of time, everything just starts ratcheting up. And so where does it take us? I think you're right. I think it's such an emerging industry. And you feel like it's been saying this for like 5 years. And now it did kind of feel like, because look at liquid now. You'd have people talking liquid into your data center, like, I don't know, maybe a couple times a year. You'd talk to people.
Bitcoiners, maybe.
Yeah, and even then, those guys didn't give a shit. They wanted to pump air, and they'll run those things a million degrees. They didn't care. But you'd get people that would want liquid, and it would be in the form of usually a rear door heat exchanger, something like that, maybe. It's every call you're on now, right?
Yeah.
Which is a huge shift. So that was literally 12 months of 1 to 2 applications a year to every single application is now this. That gives you an idea how fast that's moving, which is somewhat amazing.
Yeah. Those mechanical engineers, their parents have to be really proud right now because they're important again. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now the architects are just the psychopaths all by themselves.
That's right. And the structural guys too, because you have to manage for this weight that we're trying to put.
They're relevant again now. Huh?
Yeah, it's a big deal. It's mechanical and structural guys.
The kids that used to sit at the kiddie table and get to have the conversations, but they're relevant and they are driving the needle because it all comes down to what their capabilities are on the mechanical permutation, right? So I think, we talk about some cool things. We're all over the place because that's how my mind works.
Yeah, mine too.
Right. So I want to pivot into some leadership shit, and I want to do that by dovetailing back into, like, I'll tell you one of the things that I'm doing. Like tonight, I'm going to a premiere for a movie, and the guy that directed the Blair Witch Project. Amazing movie, by the way. I was deployed when that movie came out. So when I came in from being gone for months at a time, I saw that movie the first night I got off the submarine, and I had sleep. I didn't sleep all night. I was like, I'll never camp again. And I even told the director that. I was with him last week, and I was like, hey, listen, man, I should send you an invoice for all the therapy I had to get because I had bad dreams. Really nice guy. But he does a lot of cool movies. He's doing this 777 movie where these guys that are military broke a bunch of world records. It's an incredible movie about how they honor the living and the fallen. And I spent time with him asking him, about a documentary on data centers, right? And we've created a lot of content through these podcasts, and we have a lot more that we have coming. And we've recorded some amazing leaders of industry. And I'm getting ready to bring on a bunch more. Like Ferdman's going to come on, John's coming on. Oh, yeah. I got Bill Stein getting ready to come on. From Digital. I'm sure he's got some crazy stories. Founding CFO of Digital, was there when they went public, and then was the CEO up until recently. But this industry, I'm fascinated about the birth of the industry. And your background and mine dovetails into the beginning of this industry. Not everybody's background has that, but we've been around long enough to where we can. So I'm trying to, I'm bringing on these people, and we're going to, it was Christian Bellatti's idea, so I give him the credit. He's like, we should be doing a 4-hour, documentary on the beginning of this industry, because, and then by the end of this year, people will want to know. Once people discover this industry on a mainstream level, they're going to be like, all right, take me backwards. Where did this all start? Who were the pioneers? Who's the Henry Ford?
Right.
Does that make sense? And quite frankly, we live amongst the Henry Fords of our industry right now, right? this ain't the NFL. This is still kickball, right? It'll be bigger than the NFL in a few years from now, but I think this will be the next full mainstream sport that everyone will want to be a part of, because every kid at home right now playing video games realizes that a data center is the engine for that video game too. So now they may want to pay attention. Right. And it's an opportunity for you to, okay, I think college was plan A. Well, I'm going to ask a little bit about your background, because I do want people to understand how you become the SVP of CyrusOne. That was one of the largest publicly traded mission critical REITs in the world, was taken private for billions of dollars, and you quarterback billions of dollars of infrastructure that they're doing, right? Mm-hmm. How do you go from being an electrician to that, right? So I do want to talk about that, and that also dovetails a little bit into the history of the industry, and then what you've learned as a person, as you would say, what made you a better person, but what ultimately made you a better leader to where you could lead a team of savages. Because I know I either know of or know everyone on your team, and none of them are weak. You know what I'm saying? So like, you've recruited a very strong team, and you have to be worthy of leading that team. So over the course of your career, you had to grow and develop into that, right? Sure. Plus, those are people that have a massive volume of talent, and they could go take that talent and go park it at any company and bring value, but they chose to go work for you and that company, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of things that you can unpackage along that narrative, right? And I want others to do it, because I'm trying to humanize you, but an SVP at CyrusOne seems almost unreachable to a lot of people, right? Especially with the capacity of responsibility that you have. Yeah. So I'm not trying to humanize that, but I do hope that it is approachable for them, because there's someone that's listening right now that has an idea that you need to hear about, and they maybe don't understand what's important to you, right? And what matters most, or how you want to be engaged. But I am going to be trying to really memorialize and document the birth of this industry, and the podcasts are going to be a big vehicle. We're also going to most likely have a DCAC this year, shooting and recording the producers and the directors, and turning a lot of the things that we're doing at DCAC into part of that documentary.
No, that's great.
It's going to be amazing.
It really is an amazing event. Like, honestly, and I'm not just saying that because we're sitting at the table. I've said this a number of times, is that you go to that, and like, sounds weird, but like, I'm proud of you to be able to this and to be able to put that thing together and have an event that people like. That's an event that people want to go to. Like, that's not just going to, and I won't name any of the other events, but it's like the one that people say, like, look at Hatem. It's the one, the one he goes to.
I can't get him to speak yet, but
it's very impressive. I mean, I'm super impressed by people that chase dreams. Like, I love that. Sure. Like, just go and fight and fail, and get up and do it again, and fail and get up and do it again. And then I enjoy listening to people that can really speak, and have people listen, right? And people can absorb things. Those are two qualities I think to me, if you can live in that world, you're going to be fine.
I try to bring on people that are going to challenge the way that you view things and their objective. Like, when people would always ask me, I mean, we've had this because you spoke before, and I'm like, look, man, I don't tell people what to talk about. I'm not going to give you a subject and be like, hey, can you talk about this? Because like, I find people that I have found that people that have convictions on certain things, not only do they not need my help on what to talk about, but I couldn't stop them from talking about it if they tried, if I tried. I just try to find people that want to orate, or they have something that is important to them, that they feel like it's they have enough passion that they can radiate in the way they communicate it, that it'll challenge the listeners to, one, pay attention. It's really hard to capture the attention of people when they have a rectangle in their hand that has access to everything, right? I mean, I was just speaking at an event last night, and the people, there's only very limited people there, but there were people sitting right in front of me that were texting the whole time, right? And I'm like, you know, it's okay, right? But you're going to have to battle for attention, right? That's a really hard thing. So it means you have to have something that you have to have content that resonates, right? And you have to be relatable almost to where they feel like, hey, this makes sense and I'm within that reach. I'm around a lot of people that are, like I was in New York last week watching a bunch of incredible people do incredible things. And I had imposter syndrome hanging out with these people where I was like, you know what I'm saying? It's tough when you're around certain people, and there's luminaries in this industry I spend time with. And even those people that helped start this industry, it's like, I've been in this industry for just as long as them, but I wasn't changing it like they were. I'm trying to make change now, but I feel like that conference should be something that where when people leave, you were able to capture their attention and you were challenging them in a topic in which when they left, they felt inspired to go learn more on their own. That's the only way to advance the industry, not by giving out PhDs, you know, or dissertations on stage talking about something, but basically a call to action or a movement that says, I challenge you to go be a better professional by learning more about nuclear. Like, why do you not know as much about Jim? About, you know what I'm saying? Like, well, why aren't you talking to him about more? Like, you drink coffee, right? If I came to your office and said, hey, in a month from now, can I have coffee with you? Would you make the time for me to have coffee for an hour and we could talk about it? Maybe I have an idea that's emerging, right? Maybe you need to hear about it, right? But everybody has to be approachable. This industry is not mainstream yet. Let's take advantage of the fact that, like, we have our own, you know, LeBron Jameses of our industry. We have our own celebrities of this industry. And before they become unreachable, we still need to be able to engage in them before they sunset and become governance or, you know, they become policy makers of industry as we become more mainstream. When this industry explodes, the thing that will be adopted more and quicker will be ethics. And that's where we do a lot of the things in advance that we're already self-imposing, but we're being regulated into how we do it. And that also has a good byproduct because it reduces the amount of unintended consequences that happen as a byproduct of the designs we're making today.
Right. And wisdom, right?
Lessons learned.
That wisdom that we may be sunsetting, you know, with some of that, but you tap into that. Like,
well, I don't think we are sunsetting very soon.
I mean, as a people, not as a, not.
Well, look, speaking of which, because I do believe that our best days ahead of us in terms of society are real. I think that technology is an application that scares the shit out of a lot of people, but we're moving at a scale and a pace in which we can control most of the things that we're doing, right? And despite the fact there's a lot of people that hate humanity, there's a lot of people that still love it. And we're going to be trying to do good things for this technology, roll it out in a way that doesn't harm society, and then use it in a way that doesn't harm society. And we're just creating, you know, means and methods to deliver that capability, right? That's all that we're doing. Where did you start from electrician, you know, to how you got to the banks? And then did you go straight from, when you came to Cyrus One, did you come straight from JP Morgan? Or?
No. So I was,
yeah, tell us your story. And then, like, the other thing is this, I know that you're a badass golfer. Everyone tells me, are you like a handicap of 0 or scratch? What do they call it? Don't lie.
No, I can play, but I'm not nearly as good as some of the
I will edit your lies right out of this podcast. Just know this.
No, listen, part of this whole thing,
you're competitive.
I am competitive, and I always have been. Like I was blessed when I was younger, and possibly some even now, that I'm very athletic. I was a left-handed baseball player, and I had a good arm, and I was really fast, and it opened doors for me, like, throughout life a little bit, where I was a good baseball player, a good football player, enough that, you know, I got to speak to people about the next step in life, right? And like you said, the going on to college and that stuff. So I was able to speak to people coming to see me and getting offers to go to different places to play. Had a different path in life, you know, an obstacle that kind of stopped me from moving on in that, and I had to go to work. And I tell people this all the time, like when I'm explaining these things, is that you're going to run across a time in your life where you're just going to feel like, what am I doing? I mean, am I a loser? Like, what is going on? And that's
It's like you were reading my mind this morning.
yeah. So, and that's the point, right? It could be when you're 18, 19 years old and you're ready to go to college and that gets ripped out from under you. It can be when you're done with college and you're like, okay, now what? Or it can be when you're 30 and you just lose a job, or 50 or 60. It can be sometime. It defines
security your whole life.
That's right. And it defines you a little bit. It starts defining you, how you react to those situations. And my thing was, I went to work. I was fortunate enough that my father was in the industry, a union electrician, an IBEW guy. So was my grandfather. And from a kid that thought he was going on to do other things in college to pivoting into the industry was a little bit different. But I was fortunate in that they knew how to get into the union. And I did that. And I approached it. I don't really know that I approached it this way at the time, because at that time I was 19, 20 years old when I got in. And I approached it the same way I approached sports. It was just a different achievement that I was trying to do. Like, I was trying to be the best electrician, as funny as it sounds, right? So I went and got my contractor's license and I passed that test. So I had that and started working, went through the program, came out of that, was working for a couple different electrical contractors, started more or less specializing in certain electrical things. We were doing a lot of operating rooms and switchgear stuff. And then I went to work for Bear Stearns, who was doubling the size of their data center, which was just a comm room at the time, 1,500 square feet to 3,000 square feet. But they wanted, it's craziness. But it was active. So I ended up going over to Bear as a contractor consultant for I didn't know how long that was going to be. It ended up being 13 years before it went down, and went from there to JP Morgan. Now, the thing with all this is, and what I learned over that time is, you can be successful. It doesn't take a degree necessarily. People understand hardworking people who show up, right? Who push it just a little bit further. You don't have to be running circles around people, but just be a good worker, be a good person. I had some doors that luckily I opened, and people were there to help me open at times. So I went from being an electrician to vice president at Bear Stearns, to senior vice president at JP. And then from JP, I stayed there for about 5-6 years before coming to CyrusOne. So it's a little bit different path. And what I would say to anybody, this is why I push the trades so much.
Me too.
The trades is not a thing where this is the end state for you. It doesn't mean you're going to be an electrician and great. There you go. You're going to be an electrician.
I love how you're saying this. Keep going.
I'm an electrician. Like that, I'm proud of the fact that I can fix virtually anything. And to be honest with you, so I have a problem. It's a tracking problem, like a dyslexia that I have a problem reading. Never talked about, never diagnosed my whole life. But when I read things, it's a struggle. So for somebody who was going through school, I got good grades, and I got good grades because I pushed it a little bit and tried, but it wasn't that hard anyway, to be honest. So I don't know what it would have been like going into college, struggling with that stigma, constantly having to read stuff. That's why even when I get chains of emails now, it takes time to go through stuff like that. But you can do it. And so maybe the path for me was better, that I wasn't going into college and doing whatever. It was a trade. And I feel like I'm a wrencher. Like I have that wrencher gene in me. Like I like fixing things. I like doing things. Going into the trades, this is going to sound crass. It's not a death sentence to anybody who's...
It's a great place to be from.
It's a fantastic place to be. And it opens other doors. And that's... Now, when I was at JP, one of the things that I'm very proud of is when I was going to hire people at JP, they would get, HR would give me, okay, here's what the criteria is. I said, take off 4-year degree.
Yeah.
I said, 'cause I don't need that. I don't need for people to have that. I want an electrical guy, a mechanical guy. I can teach them Excel and how to send emails or do PowerPoints. Try to teach a guy how to do electrical theory, a little bit harder.
I love this conversation. One of my best friends, his son was in school, for a few years and decided he really wanted to get in the game, and he's in the trades right now. He's an apprentice. And that's his family business, is on the contracting side. My family business was military, right? Every man in my lineage is military. It's not, to a lot of people, the military was a plan C right behind the trades, which was plan B, and college is always plan A. Like, go to college if you can. If you can't, then go into the trades, learn a craft with your hands where you can go do something. Having a skilled craft is more important to me than a college degree, because you could go work anywhere if you're a plumber, electrician, even if you're a welder, right? And I've known electricians making $250,000 a year. I know a lot of electricians that never once spent a day on campus, and they make $1 million a year in leadership and management. My thing is, I think the whole model's changing. Technology is changing the value of education. Technology means that I have other applications in which I could. Education is one thing, but learning is way different. And I could learn through a million different ways. I don't have to be on a campus where some dipshit's protesting a bunch of stupid shit that doesn't matter.
That's right.
Right. And I think that plan A being college is now, I think plan A should be the trades or the military. And it's funny because I had a conversation this morning in my headquarters with a kid that went to college, a kid who's going to be a senior in college. He's a Baylor. He's been an intern for us for 3 years, and he's exceptional, right? And a lady that was former military, never spent it. I mean, she went to college for a semester and then joined the military. And I asked the kid that went to college and graduated, I said, why'd you go to college? He said, well, I wanted to be able to get a good job when I got older. And I said, cool. And I said to the college kid, I said, why are you going to college? He's like, so that when I graduate, I could have a job that pays me well. And I said, cool. And I went to the military lady and I'm like, why did you join the military? And her first reaction was, well, I wasn't sure what to do. Right. And I said, take a number, like, who does? Just because you go to college doesn't mean you know what you want to do.
Sure.
It just means, what it normally means is your parents don't give a shit. I'm one of them. I have 2 kids. I have one at University of South Carolina and one at the Citadel. Why am I talking about how I'm not a huge fan of college while I pay for 2 kids to go to college and I have a third in high school? Because I want them to go live in the world, not under my roof, and learn how to party and learn how to meet people and how to build networks. Because at the end of the day, you don't really build data centers. You build relationships. And then the relationships that you build leaders. And those leaders go build teams, and those teams design data centers that someone goes and builds. But it is, at the beginning, just a relationship that you build. Everyone that works for you is there to work for you, because they want to come work for you, right? That's what leaders do, is they build an amazing team around themselves, right? So if you look at it, you started with relationships. And I'm like, okay, so I could go to the trades and go get a job and work in there for 4 to 5 years like college and come out and go get just as much money from the trades. If I worked in the trades
Easily.
for 5 years, I could go get a job probably paying more without any debt.
With no debt. That's key.
That what a college kid just graduated with. Because college kids graduate and I'm like, cool. Go make a job making $45,000 a year, whatever entry level is coming out of college for whatever it is that you studied, and then anchor a couple $100,000 of debt behind that. Same for the military. Like, you didn't have to go to college. You could go into the military. You don't have to be an Air Force Power Pro or a Navy nuke or anything. Like, you could go be an aviation BOSIS mate or MP or a deck division or whatever, and you can still come in, or be combat infantry like a bullet sponge, which are my favorites to haze. But you can do that and come out and still go make a really good living. So why would we send kids off to college to rack up debt when in 4 to 5 years when they get out, going head to head against their civilian counterparts that are in the trades? If you go do 4 to 5 years in the trades and come out and want to go work in the back of an office and start learning leadership or start learning business, you fundamentally have the trade knowledge of what happens in the field to be able to apply that to what happens in the office.
For sure.
And that's what allows you to grow and develop and become a business person, no longer a tradesman, right? But you're a business person of the trades, right? And the military offers the same. You could go spend 4 or 5 years in the military and then come out and go get an amazing job without spending time in college, because the validation that you have through the military, the validation you have coming through the trades is just as valuable, or not more valuable now than what you get going into university, with the exception of very certain degrees at university. Licensed degrees that you come out of, you graduate with an engineering degree, you go get a PE. Mm-hmm. You graduate, pre-med or pre-law. I mean, we need those scientists, we need those doctors, we need the lawyers, we need those people too, but not everything is college worthy. Some degrees, some educations are, what I should say, better opportunities for truly learning something of value that you transcends beyond what you're doing at any one job, will be from the crafts, from the trades themselves, or from the military.
Yeah. I mean, life shouldn't be a series of, well, that's the next step. Like that. And that's what happens with people. And it happens from high school to college. It happens from, a relationship to marriage. Like those sorts of decisions should not be, well, this is the next step. Well, that doesn't mean that you have to take that next step.
Society has defined this construct that all of our kids need to go into.
Right.
And this
it's a business. I mean, it is the ultimate business now. You watch that. I mean, they want asses in the seats, like, period.
I'm okay. Like, I pay for 2 kids to go to college, and I'm okay with it because I want them to go learn what I don't want to. Like, let's be honest. When you're 18 to 21, 22, you're not a piece of shit, but you're a little bit of a terrorist. It's not because you're selfish. You're just so self-absorbed in your own world. You're really reinventing yourself. Whatever you thought that mattered until you graduated high school, you realize you graduate, like, none of that shit mattered, right? So now you got to go reinvent yourself again. And now you're like, holy shit, what am I going to be? And they're reinventing the Constitution themselves as a human. I don't want them to be around me while they're doing that. Go to college to do that.
Yeah, my mom said that's why she paid for college, was to
get you out of there.
Teach you how to grow up and how to be an adult living on your own.
Yes.
As a step,
that's
right?
That's all college is.
But now
building networks too.
But that has changed from a $10,000 a year thing to a $60,000 a year
bullshit.
thing. Which, all right, come on. Now even you speak to the trades and the PE sides of it. Yeah, okay, well, but 70% of the other stuff that you're jamming down my throat in college that I have to take because it's not what I'm doing, but you have this.
You must know analyzation and interpretation of American English literature to be a good one.
Yeah, I mean, it's
bullshit.
That's when you're exactly right. That's when this becomes bullshit. That's where you lost me. Then as college, but
it'll erode. These what's doing a great thing for a lot of these people, where they're watching all these kids protest on these campuses, and they're like, I'm not sending my kids to that shit.
Yep. They say the trades are up. Trade enrollment is up like 15%.
That's fantastic.
So
we have a real huge problem right now in recruiting and retention within the military ranks.
But I can't imagine how hard that is.
Yeah, I'm going to try to help fix that with these conversations. Like, look, you'll help me with the conversation that we're having right now, because I tell people to join the military. Because when you come out of the military, there's a job waiting for you in this industry. There's 9 different job domains and 265 different jobs you could pick. You could be in HR, you could be in finance, you could be in operations, you could be on the business development side, marketing. You could be on the engineering and operations side. You could be on anything. You just don't. If you come out of the military and you've learned some shit, like a hierarchy or how to work hard or how to pass tests like drug tests or, basic things, like you tend to get trained in the military on a lot of advanced weapons and machinery and technology. And they normally spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on veterans to train them. Like, if they could learn those things, then they could learn what the civilian community has.
Well, it sounds like you learn how to be responsible.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what this whole thing is, right? You want people to be responsible and respectful when they come to work for you. And
reliability.
Yeah, reliability is good, and not always chasing. Like, Kayla and I had this conversation. There are, that chasing titles and chasing stuff like that. Like, it takes time sometimes, and it's not instant. And some people want, I don't know, instant titles and be able to do that. And Hayden always says you can't eat your title. So what? Like, we're paying you.
Yeah.
And I have embraced that philosophy of have some patience, work, get, I guess you'd say earn a reputation too in the business, right? Because your reputation will follow you. So build it the right way. And so I think that's part of it too. Like, when you look at some of these guys, I mean, all of the people that I have coming on board they haven't jumped around. That's a bad sign for me. When people when I see their resume, it's boom, 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 boom.
Oh, if they moved around, that's a bad sign for you?
Yeah.
I depend on the circumstances. I love those stories. Well, I'm one that every 2 years, but I normally told people I was only going to be there for 2 years because of the circumstances of my life. I had cancer and I was at MD Anderson in between surgeries, and they're like, we can't guarantee you more than 2 years of your life. And I was like, that's how I'll live my life.
Now yours, and it's an hourglass too.
That's it.
Yeah. And there is that side of it too, right?
Well, I do think that a lot of people make really shitty decisions because they're chasing the wrong title or the wrong money. I mean, I've done it. I've made bad decisions.
We all do it younger, because you want that, right?
Yeah, it matters. I mean, there's a part in time where you're trying to establish like your dominance over your other family members or your other friends that you graduated with, or what are the other kids in school doing? And then finally you realize, like, I said it to my daughter once, right? She was so worried about her outfit one day, and I was like, do you remember the outfits that everybody else wore the first day? Yeah, no one gives a shit because they're also focused on themselves, that they really don't focus on others, right?
That's right.
So I'm like, I think that you'll realize once my kids got old enough where they realized that none of that shit mattered, like they were making people, trying to impress people that didn't matter. I think then they just start focusing on themselves. That's where you remove the ego from those equations. Like you said, you don't eat your title. So just go contribute.
I think part of that was too, when I was going through what I was going through, like through the high school and not going to college, I never wanted people to look at me like, oh,
because he didn't go to college.
That's a bust. Or that here, oh, remember him? He was, he was this, that, or this in high school, and he was going to be this, and now you know what he's doing?
Yeah.
He's in the trade. And I always wanted to. I still felt like I had to prove people wrong. Like
that's a good chip on your shoulder,
and it was, and I felt like, all right, I'm gonna.
Good.
I never in my life took handouts for anything, no government aid. I just said I'm going to grind this out. Yeah, and I didn't want. I don't know. I didn't want people to. I don't think family would ever be ashamed, but I didn't want them to feel, I didn't want anybody to feel like this is what happened and now he's here.
Well, look, I mean, I don't speak for everyone that's listening, but now knowing that you didn't go to college, I know that I'm going to think of you less. So what the fuck, man? I mean, I finished school because I made a promise to myself before I went in the military that I would use that GI Bill when I got out. And I did. I mean, it didn't make a single difference to anything when I was done. It just allowed me to say that I finished something. And it was a fulfillment to myself. So promise myself. But I'm with you, man. I mean, I'm going to find talent where it's at. And I find it from people that are hungry and have a chip on their shoulder and something to prove. Those are the best people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, that goes back to that thing. When somebody told me a long time ago, actually, when I was at Bear Stearns, one of the guys on the trading desk was hiring, and I had asked him, what kind of guy? Like,
what are you looking for?
What are you looking for? He's like, honestly, I love hiring ex-athletes.
Because they're so competitive?
Yeah, and he said specifically college. And I said, okay. And young, I don't know enough to know anything. And he went on later to explain, remember when we had talked, and I said, yeah, he's like, those guys, they know what it's like to get someone in their grill, and they know what it's like to get up early and have to do workouts, and they know what it's like to lose and get knocked down, and you better be better than that guy, and you better drive, and he's like, those are qualities.
Yeah.
And when you have someone that can go to a higher level at those things, he's like, you carry that with you. Through life. And he's like, it's just been my experience. He said, it doesn't always work out, but he's like, I love ex-athletes. And I would imagine the military would be in the same sort of category, right? Because I mean,
it's just people that are outliers, right? It's a small number of people that compete athletically in college, right? Because it's so competitive. And there's less than 0.5% of the US population joins the military anyway. So,
that should change. You think we should go back to getting people more?
No, you don't. You don't want to force people to do. You want to volunteer service because it brings out the best. But I mean, we're not a weak nation. We have an incredible military. I'm not oblivious to the threats that exist in this nation through other nations like China and stuff. But I also know that there's no war machine more proficient, more capable than America. Like last time China was in war was Korea? I don't even think they have the right military to fight us right now. And I don't think they have the same capabilities that our teams have. We're the most proficient war machine on earth, right? Not that that's a good thing, but this is the concern that we should have about the military, not whether or not we should have a forced one, but people don't realize that 80% of the military comes from the military, right? So a lot of us feed back into those branches of service. What happens when people like me that are 4th, 5th generation military going back to Scotland? I mean, I even have a son who's at the Citadel right now who's planning on going in the Army. So that'd be another generation of OFLs that are wearing the uniform, right? What do you do when you have families like ours that are telling our kids, don't join because the military is woke as hell or you're this or that? And the reality is I don't really give a shit what the generals and the admirals are doing right now necessarily, because the frontline leaders and the mid-level managers, in fact, there's people that, like my brother's a West Point class of 96, and there's guys that I'm going to go to a brigadier general promotion group here in a little bit, but I know what those people look like. They're the types of people that we would have went and had beers with. They're like us. And I see a lot of the woke bullshit being wrung out. I see a lot of the weak leaders being flushed out of the military. And I see a lot of good ones coming in. And the military needs people like my young man, like my son. You know, we need great people to still join, because people don't remember, President Buchanan, but they remember Abe Lincoln, the guy that got us into the Civil War and the guy that got us out, right? we don't talk enough. We talk a lot about September 11th. We don't talk a lot about September 12th, right? There will be another September 11th. It's going to be in this country, and it'll probably be in the next 18 months. It'll be horrible. I wish it wasn't the case.
Sure.
But we have open borders, regardless of where you stand in politics. There's a lot of military-aged people that have come across our borders, and there's a lot of soft targets, right? There's a lot of how easy would it be for someone to go clock off a vest at one of these little tent encampments on a college campus where somebody,
100%.
You know, there's a lot of bad things that are going to happen. And then it's, you know, what happens when that happens, and then other people race in to help them. And then they do what they do in Afghanistan and Iraq, from what I've learned, is when there would be an attack, it would be to draw in first responders and then set off a secondary explosion type of thing. The sophistication of war will bring itself over here now because of the circumstances of our borders, and then we'll have to correct for that when that happens. We don't want to have a drafted military when that happens. You need people that give a shit, and I want it to be more like people talk about December 7th, 1941, but look at the recruiting that happened in December 8th of 1941, right? And everyone wanted to join, right? Everyone was a patriot September 12th, right?
Is it a calling?
I think there was a time where there was a lot of people that felt that you only joined the military if you couldn't go get a real job. And
was
now,
it a calling for you? Do you feel like it?
how about this? I'll answer it like this. It's an interesting question because I have to be careful how I communicate it in my family, because I have, you know, I don't want to over glorify any of these things. I certainly don't want to send my kids off to combat, but if somebody's got to do it, right? And evil's got to go, right? And then it's typically a person shooting that other person to make it go away. And I grew up believing that I would one day join the military. I just wasn't sure which branch. And over the course of time, it was really easy for me to know exactly which branch I was going to serve, because I saw brothers in every other branch, and I didn't want to do that. But I also liked the movies about submarines and shit, and I was like, that sounds cool, right? I just think it was a little bit more punk rock than regular, like running around with a gun. Like I was talking to, I had Mike Sorelli, SEAL Team 6 commander, Force Recon Marine. Just, he's Leonidas. He's the real deal, soldier, right? And he was talking about shit, and I was like, as soon as they told me how cold all that PT shit was, I was out. Like I had no desire to. You see those videos of those guys like jackhammering and shaking? I was like, oh yeah, no thanks. Not that I could have made it through it, you know, without that, but I'm like, even with that, I was like, no, I'm good. Submarines sound like a pretty good opportunity. So my calling was I wanted to be a part of something more significant than myself, and I got to see that. And I also knew that the military was the greatest fraternity on earth. Like, I'm sorry, but I take an oath with all the people in my fraternity to protect and defend the Constitution, up and including the cost of my own life. And they did the same for me, and that's tough, right? I mean, there's a lot of paramilitary type mindset people that we work around that they understand, they believe in that. And I think that I've never met a grown man that regrets joining the military. I've met a lot that wish they did. Right. So I loved what I was doing. I was lucky to be raised in the family I was, and we were all taught to serve in my family. So I do feel like more of a calling for me, but I do my best to make sure that I don't push that downstream to my kids and let them know that they don't have to serve, but I would like to see them serve society in some capacity, whether that's being a teacher or a nurse or whatever they want to do to give back, but they have to give and contribute to society, not just take from it.
It's gotta be so hard, like at that age, like trying to get 18-year-olds to feel like that's what they're going to go into, right? Your choices are college, and this goes back to, like I was saying, that could be an inflection point in your life. It's good when somebody has a path determined, like this is what I'm going to do. But for the people who don't, I don't think there is enough people talking about the military, quite honestly.
Would you have ever joined?
Yes.
What would you rather have done if you go back and do it again? Would you have been Air Force? Would you have been Army? You don't look like a bullet sponge. You look like you would have been in one of the smarter branches. I mean, the Navy's kind of like the Army, except the Navy's just for smart people, you know? So
I have family that was military. My uncle was high ranking in the military and the Air Force, and then civilian Air Force. I think I can say it now. He was part of a very elite part of the military. And I thought, you know, when I had some challenges in my life, I thought this is what I think this might be the right thing, because I felt the same way. I felt like I always embraced the team and the camaraderie thing, and even friendships. And to this day, I don't know which one. I always say it would have been Air Force, but
It's like the pulling guard of the military. You know what I'm saying?
It is, but I do think of like the Marines. I mean, that I just feel
Those
like,
guys are tough.
Yeah.
I like to talk shit on them all the time too.
So I didn't give it enough thought to know which, but I do remember.
You would have been a fine submariner, man.
I remember standing there talking to a recruiter. And
John would have been a submariner. Larry would have been a freaking Army guy. Fava was an Army guy.
He was.
So I looked at the military like I look at verticals of industry, healthcare, automotive, finance. It doesn't matter. It's just, I looked at the military and I said, look, it's like a whole nother vertical of industry, and each branch of service could not be more different than the other. And I didn't go in there knowing what I wanted to do. And I didn't go into the military to make money. I did it to make a difference. And when I came out of the military, all I wanted to do was do the same. I just want to make a difference. And as long as I'm paid proportion to that value, then I was happy. I just worked at places where I'm like, if this is going to suck, I'm not spending what could be the last 2 years of my life not being happy with what I'm doing. That was the optics in how I viewed my life, because of the construct of cancer, which I was blessed with, to think about my life in that I've lived a much more intentional, deliberate life than most people, just because listen, man, if I was called last night and said, hey man, you're dead in 2 years from now, this is the date, I'd be doing this with you and we would have no urgency changes, because I'm living my life as though I'm dead in 2 years from now. But it took me years to get to that.
And when I talk to people, when I'm trying to get them on the team, I had this conversation, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. My team's success as individuals far outweighs my own. Like
yeah, sure.
I feel like
they can all do better.
I want my path for them is like my focus is them. Like I want them to get to a higher place, and I get more out of that than me getting to a higher place. That's what leaders do. And I love it. And I think of the military style of just that mindset. Just seems to me to be able to put your life in front of somebody else's, right?
You know why I like veterans? For the same reason that day trader, that guy that ran the trading floor, the reason why he liked athletes. You know, when they send people off to basic training, have you ever seen someone come back from that?
No.
All right. Well, normally they're a completely different person. They're like a 2.0 version of themselves. They rewrite the entire constitution of a human for you when you're there. And they normally do it in 8 to 10 to 12 weeks. It's amazing. Uncle Sam's really figured out how to rewrite a person's constitution as a human. How do you think they do that? They ain't hugging them to death all day. We've all seen a movie. We know what basic training is. There's not an affirmation team there to make sure that you feel good with the words, and they're not asking pronouns. They're in your face, and it's called pressure testing. Stress inoculation is what's lacking most between 18 and 21 and 22. That's why we can't load them up with major responsibilities in the civilian world, because I'm like, this person is never, how are they going to handle the pressure of X, Y, and Z? Well, if you're a young kid who's 18 and you're driving a fast attack submarine that's worth $1 billion like I was, you learn about pressure real fast. You know what I'm saying? And that's the value of the transitioning veteran, is they've been in the mission critical vertical longer than you and I, except they don't measure it in downtime. They measure it in their own mortality. And when you deal with people that deal with life and death for a living, it means like I was working at a different operator, and I had a leader come up to me, and he was not comfortable with me or my subordinate who's former military, because in the midst of the craziest shit that could be happening to an operator, what's the worst thing that happened to an operator? You know what that is? And we were going through those iterations. It's not if, it's when that happens. It's inevitable for every operations group, and you're going to have that sort of setback. We weren't freaking out. We were just iterating and going through the process like you would if you've been conditioned and trained to do that in the military. And I remember going to one of my guys, and I asked him, I said, is everything going to be all right on your side? He's like, Kirk, no one's getting shot at today. No one's getting blown up today, and everyone's going home. We're going to figure this problem out. We're going to keep on trucking.
Yeah, that's great.
But the relative nature to that urgency that you get, it's no different than a competitor that has had huge setbacks. Like, God forbid, one day you may not be a scratch golfer anymore. You know what I'm saying? You may have to actually pick up a handicap, right?
Yeah. I'm a 10 for everybody who wants to play the game.
That'll be edited out for sure, right? So, no, but I mean, like, look, I want to continue to have these conversations. I want you and I really like where your head's at and the way that you talk about and approach your side of leadership. I think that leadership transcends beyond what you do with just your team, and we have to continue to message that out to these partners. We have to get the partners more rolled in. And the thing that's crazy and scary for me the most is that we're being drawn in and asked for solving solutions on power. A lot of people come to us as a third-party objective. Like, I mean, look, hey, you're going to go look at a bunch of different groups, but I'll look at them differently, and I'm going to get a little bit, they're going to report to you and present to you differently than will me, because I'm going to have to learn things that are going to be like annuity model based partnerships with them, where I'm going to go into 14 markets and do that 10 times. Does that make sense over the course of the next 5 years? I need to be able to get these people to buy in, and it's going to take the leaders of this industry that have the patience to engaging with the power side of this industry, which is not our industry.
Right.
Like I'm not saying we have the supply chain flowing really smooth on our side right now, but we kind of do.
We do. We know what the obstacles are and how to kind of,
and we work with them to help them around it.
That's right.
We collaborate with the supply chain vendors. On the power side, it is the Wild West, and they're terrorists still, in my opinion, until they're not, right? And they all have.
There's nowhere else you can go. If I have a problem with ComEd in Chicago, it's not like I can say, well, all right, well, forget it. I'm just going to go to these guys. Well, there is no other guy.
No, but there's a lot. You're right. There's only so many different manufacturers of engines, but there's what I'm learning are there are plenty of people that package up engines and sell it as a service. You just have to figure out which group is going to lean in and partner with you. Because right now they're so transaction based. Like, yeah, we'll go right here with you and this is it. And I'm like, no, hold on, let's pause. Over the course of the next 5 years, I would imagine if I asked you what you needed in the next 6 quarters in power, 8 quarters, whatever, you could aggregate that. And you'd be like, look, I probably need this much volume over the X amount of time. You're not going to get it all from one basket. You're going to go get a couple different partners and you're going to feed the ecosystem, and you do it in a healthy, balanced way. So you're not at risk and vulnerable. My thing is we got to get them to slow down and lean in with us on that direction. I think the power side is where we need to invest the most with that ecosystem of partners. They're the ones that we need the most, and they're the ones that are the least known to us in this space now.
Yeah, and I don't think they don't
understand our industry well enough.
They don't understand the speed in which it works.
They don't. If they did, they would slow down and think about the long game with us.
Yeah, and that's we started early on talking about where we are with gas and that. I think that's one of the hurdles that we have to get over is, where we can put these things and who can scale into that stuff. To your point, the size is just so massive. It's just
that's why we have to spend time. Maybe at DCAC this year we spent a little bit more time just going through power, because there's these huge numbers tossed around all the time, so no one takes anything seriously. That's why they're transaction based and they're only focused on the 50-meter targets. We need to sit down and really talk long term with them and figure out how we could get them to lock in and grow and scale with us, so that we don't have to go. I mean, we will have to rip through a few different groups until we find the right ones, but we need to be able to have. We're at a point now where we know where we get most of our UPSs from, as an example, but it took time to get there. We just have to continue to harvest that ecosystem. But Jim, we're out of time, but I could talk for a lot more time with you. We're going to have to do this again. Next time we will go see Rogan. We'll just coordinate a little bit more.
That'd be great. Yeah, that's on me.
Well, listen, man, thanks for coming and always supporting everything that we're doing. Coming to DCAC Live, coming to this, it means a lot to me. You know that. Our friendship means a lot to me too. So it's an honor to have you here. I appreciate it. It's an
honor to be here.
Listen, man, I can't wait to have more of these conversations. There's a lot for us to unpackage. So I hope that you keep.
We'll do it again. We'll keep this thing moving.
Let's do it, man.
All right, brother.
Thanks for joining the revolution, bud.
All right. It's been great. Thank you.